So Henry Cavill, the British actor who was playing Geralt for The Witcher's live adaptation, is leaving the show? Oh man. I thought he did a phenomenal job. He was also a fan of the books and the games. Heard he didn't particularly like the direction it was going. I became a fan of the Witcher universe because of the show. I know, I might get some shit for it. Fuck it. And starting 2 weeks ago, I had to do some digging, as in play the games. Witcher 3. A beloved game by its diehard fans and people who just love RPGs. It's filled with immersion and breaks the standards of modern gaming. You're a rizzed up white-haired witcher who kills shit. Got more bodies than a sleep-deprived VTube avatar. Double entendre. Boy, you reaching. Anyways, The Witcher 3 was released in 2015 from CD Projekt Red. Yo, the same company that dropped Cyberpunk, a game that quote-unquote flopped. I played it and it was actually pretty fucking dope, but I'll save that for another video. For someone who is 8 years late to the game, let alone late to the Witcher series in general, I have no biases. But expectations, I do. RPG is my language. Bringing extinction with magic and swords are my pronouns. Y'all get it. Let me tell you, this fucking game was extraordinary. We are in the 13th century where the Nilfgaardian Empire and the Northern Kingdoms are at war. The Emperor of Nilfgaard, Emhyr, is on the rise to conquer the North. A northern kingdom called Redania is the North's last standing defense and is the primary adversary for the Nilfgaardians. The game takes place in the northern part of the continent. Yeah, the continent. That is what it's called. It's not England. You have Velen, which is no man's land, Skellige, a Viking-like island to the west, and Novigrad, a large city up north of Velen, which is a free city aside from being part of Redania. You'll be roaming most of these parts in your journey as a Witcher. Throughout Velen, it is filled with villages, swamps, and army forts. It serves as a battlefield for war. You also find drowners and ghouls in every corner of the region. If somehow you manage to not get killed from monsters or the sword of a bandit, you'll still have to deal with nature itself. So definitely be careful where you tread. They don't call it no man's land for nothing. Novigrad is also dealing with a magic revolution where they're trying to drive mages and sorcerers out, either by exile or execution. Witch hunters roam the streets, while chaos users hide in the shadows. Chaos is the world's way of saying magic or mana. All of this seems harsh, unless you're a badass wandering witcher. The protagonist you play in this game is the one and only Geralt of Rivia. That name holds heavy in many places around the continent. But before I tell you who Geralt is, you must know what a witcher is. To sum it up, witchers are mutants who had to undergo many trials and training as children. They were adopted from youth, either as runaways or had parents who willingly gave the child away. Eventually, the kids are prepared to have a concoction of magical herbs injected into them. A serum that would cause them to have superhuman reflexes, enhanced strength, durability, poison resistance, and healing. Not many of the children survive this part of the trial, but those who do have their eyes altered golden and cat-like. When a witcher is ready, they then roam the continent and serve their purpose, being true specimens of slaying monsters. Although the witches were created for a good purpose, they didn't do things out of the kindness of their heart. Payment was a demand. If a werewolf was to slaughter a nearby village, a typical witcher probably wouldn't bat an eye if there was no gold on the table. This created a shaky reputation for the witches. I know it sounds cold-hearted, but I don't think anyone would just fight a lichen during a full moon for free. Shit, I wouldn't. That's where Geralt differs a bit from the rest. He may be shallow with his emotions, but he does have a heart at times. He's great with kids, and every now and then he'd go the extra mile for the average folk, depending on the circumstances, of course. The game is built on a multi-choice based system, so Geralt is who you make him out to be. All the choices that make logical sense and is morally good is what I see as the true Geralt. He still holds Witcher standards, don't get me wrong. He won't risk his life for nothing and will still demand payment of some sort. But there are moments where you do forget he's a Witcher who only does things purely for his benefit. He holds sturdy stoicism under tight measures. He can rationalize most things besides love. Love is just unexplainable at times. He's a charming dude who's great at being witty with his words. His nonchalant dry humor is probably what makes Geralt Geralt.
One step more and you'll gain a new hole in your head, Dwan. What do you seek here? Speak!
Oh, just out for a stroll. Getting some fresh air.
I hope you find yourself amusing, but I'm not laughing.
I love this dude. If you are a witcher, you must fight like one too. Every witcher wields two swords, one made of steel to fight men and the other made with silver to kill monsters. Witchers also utilize chaos, not to the extent of a mage, but enough to assist them in their sword fighting skills. They do magic signs that can be performed using one hand. It complements them having a sword in the other, making them the ultimate spell sword. You ready to know? That's my shit. Geralt has 5 signs in his arsenal, and yes, you can spontaneously use them all in a single fight. You have Ard, which is like a Jedi telekinetic force push, Axii, a mind control spell, Igni, the ability to burn motherfuckers, Quen, a protective magical barrier, and Yrden, a magical trap that can be set to immobilize enemies. You can upgrade each spell individually, and the potential they hold has immeasurable limits. With the Witcher's heightened reflexes, you can weave and stray from enemy attacks. It's precise and quick, but if you want to create distance, Geralt can also do a ground roll. Only downside to it is, you won't be able to get right back into fighting. Definitely, it's more of a kiting tool. Also, a big thing I noticed is that the step dodge has iframes, where you receive no damage at all for a split second, while the roll doesn't have any iframes at all. If you're not careful, you can get caught in some haymakers that'll hurt, like for real. Sometimes I feel what people tend to forget about Witchers is that they are expert alchemists. They can brew potions and elixirs to aid them in combat, granting buffs or passives. Oils can be cooked up to be put on blades. Specific oils do additional damage to specific species of monsters. For example, the Necrophage oil would do more damage to drowners and ugly-ass water hags, while Spectre oil would hit wraiths harder. You can also craft bombs that have their uses as well. That sums up the basis of how the combat system works. But before I wrap up this segment, trust me, play this game on Death March, the hardest difficulty in the game. My first playthrough, I played it on Battle Hardened, which would be like the normal difficulty. I ran through the game a second time on Death March, and man, trust me, this is how the game should have been played. It forces you to use every tool in your disposal, truly pushes you to become a master Witcher. On my normal playthrough, I didn't use oils or potions once. All I did was swing my sword and spam Ard every chance I had. When you have encounters with monsters and defeat them, they get added to the Bestiary, a book containing information on each creature you come across, giving a backstory on how they come to be and their weaknesses. That's the key part, the weaknesses. In Death March, the Bestiary becomes really important. Monsters truly become a threat, and killing them would require knowledge. You'll learn what oil each monster is weak to and what spell is best used against them. Not only that, paying attention to fighting patterns becomes more prominent. On normal, I'd get hit and just swing back harder. In Death March, that is not the case. You can't afford to get hit. If you disregard the mechanics, huge punishment is at hand. You can't just approach every situation the same, and you must be prepared. It is the true experience of a Witcher. Let's talk about the upgrades and builds you can explore. Something that should be kept in mind is that Geralt is already a veteran mercenary, so we don't start out the game as a peon with no skills. The general basis of what a Witcher is supposed to be is already established. You're not going through the game like an ordinary RPG where you are constantly unlocking new skills. You already have all the skills, and experience only improves them. Okay, there are a few exceptions maybe, like the Whirlwind Strike, where if you hold the light attack, you do a spinning combo. It's actually really good. You spend ability points if you want to upgrade. You obtain ability points through leveling it up, and there's these totems scattered throughout the continent. If you find one, you can absorb its power and be given an ability point. There are 4 trees: combat, science, alchemy, and general skills. Pretty self-explanatory on what each may focus on. Something that caught me by surprise is how the system worked. You don't just pick a skill within a tree and automatically get boosted. Each skill must be equipped in your skill slots. They're locked until you reach certain levels, and then you will have access to them. So let's say if I wanted a skill called Muscle Memory, which makes my light attacks do more damage, I won't get the effect until I put it on my skill slots. So even if I unlocked every skill, that doesn't mean I'll have access to them all. Also, these are skills you can upgrade multiple times, making them better. I would be allowed to make my light attacks get even stronger with the Muscle Memory skill maxed out. To add icing to the cake for skill building, there are mutagens. Each upgraded skill are under a certain tree, assigning them to a specific color. If you can see, the skill slots are sanctioned into 4, and in each, there's a mutagen slot that can be assigned to a specific group. If I had a red mutagen equipped and there is red base skills within that slot group, I'll get additional attack damage. If I filled all 3 slots with red skills, it'll boost the mutagen passive even more. Green mutagens gives more health, and blue ones give increased sign intensity. I found this system pretty interesting because it doesn't allow you to be great at everything. It sets focus and it encourages mastery, so not every playthrough and build will feel the same. To add furthermore to build development, let's talk about the gear aspects as well. You can obtain gear that gives you loads of passives. It's not only more damage or more defense. Some swords can inflict bleed or straight up freeze enemies. Specific pieces of armor offer variations of resistances. In later parts of the game, you start getting gear that have slots, allowing you to put glyphs and runestones, which can increase the intensity of signs or enhance additional stats. You can also pick up scavenger quests, sending you off to find Witcher gear scattered throughout the continent. Once you find the blueprint to a set, you'd craft and get Witcher-based looking gear, making you hella dripped. You can obtain upgraded blueprints of these sets, and eventually they become Grandmaster sets, unlocking set bonuses. Building isn't too linear and has enough versatility to suit a preferred playstyle. The world immersion is fucking crazy. CD Projekt did an outstanding job making the world feel brimming. The problem with a lot of open world games is there's just usually loads of empty space. In The Witcher 3, there's always something you're running into. Either bandit looters trying to sell you a sword, or this weak ass casual who's always trying to challenge a Witcher to a duel. He legit tries 3 times. Certain events can change through the decisions you make in the game. It can either be detrimental or convenient. Certain quest lines won't start and you'll miss out on some character arcs. Or you can open up new opportunities that you didn't have before. There's this noble called the Baron. He's in need to find his wife and daughter. In the search, you learn that his wife is held captive by a coven of witches. But before notifying the Baron, you strike a deal with the witches because they have information you need. They hand you a dagger and direct you to assassin a tree spirit. Once you confront the spirit, a conversation is sparked up. The spirit tells you about the children that the witches hold and that their fates are made to become home-cooked meals for the witches. And if you let the spirit go, she will save the children. Sounds like the right thing to do, right? If you save the spirit, you learn she does actually save the children, but learn that Anna, the Baron's wife, will be punished by the witches. They turn her into a water hag. You lift the curse, but that also breaks the agreement with Anna and the witches. And the magic that binds her inevitably leads her to death. The Baron not being able to deal with the loss, when you return to his home, you find that he didn't complete the word to Hangman. Such a tragic end to an arc. See? But if you were like, fuck them kids and let the nasty ass witches get their way, Anna stays alive and the Baron doesn't play Hangman. Anna's in a veggie state, but Baron goes and tries to find a way to cure her. Happily ever after. Shit's mind-boggling though. So, choose wisely. When you walk into a town or city, it breathes life. You get a great sense of community and culture, varied from farmers and poverty to townsfolk moving fast with business. One of my favorite things I enjoyed doing was strolling up into the Kingfisher's Inn and find contentment in its ambiance. Want to be even more immersed? Peep this.
I know him! 'Twas him murdered some Temerian boys back in White Orchard.
Silence, woman. We've come to hear music.
A murderer?
You all right?
They say witches steal young'uns. That true?
Get out, all of you.
We ain't going nowhere. And neither are you.
They won't back down now.
I can see that.
Like, bitch, how the fuck did you remember that shit, man? But looking into the distant mountains and the trees and shit, it's something too, ain't it? Music, A1. Still for humans. Favorite. This was the soundtrack that plays when you run into some pissed off Homo sapiens. Shit goes hard. Each soundtrack was orchestrated in a way where it wasn't only about being epic, but also brought out the setting you were in. All of them collectively fit a theme criteria, so it never really felt like you were not in The Witcher. Really well done. Tidy your seats, because this is the part when we touch on the heart of Witcher 3, the extraordinary storyline. It starts off with Geralt searching for his beloved sorcerer, Yennefer. Geralt is accompanied by his Witcher mentor, Vesemir. The two hold up on a stop to rest up. Then we are hit with a flashback, the iconic Geralt tub scene. Man sitting back and relaxed, then this crab bites his dick. And then there's this quick panning to Yennefer in her birthday suit. I guess we can assume they just fornicate. Eyebrow. Yen gets on Geralt about promising to train with Ciri, his adopted daughter. Arriving in the training quarters of Kaer Morhen, Vesemir is fast asleep and Ciri is going hard in the courtyard. Awakened from Geralt's startle, they both meet with Ciri below. In the midst of training the Wild Hunt, an army of specters make their appearance to capture Ciri. Before one of the horsemen was gonna swing on her, Geralt wakes up from his slumber. Turns out it was just a nightmare, a dream that felt all too real. Vesemir and Geralt get their saddles ready and continue on finding Yennefer in White Orchard. By a nearby inn, they get info about the sorcerer's last whereabouts. Geralt meets up with a commander named Peter Saar Gwynloo at a Nilfgaardian garrison who knew where she trailed off to. But before giving intel, he asks Geralt to slay a griffin that they've been having issues with. This is where you go on your first hunt, utilizing the witcher's senses to track and find clues. You then discover an alchemist who gives you the location of an herb that will draw the griffin out. Vesemir meets back up and the two set the trap for the hybrid beast. You slay the creature and return back to the commander. All of that just to find out Yennefer wasn't that far. The witcher returns to the inn and run into a scuffle with some locals. After the incident, they are approached by Nilfgaardians who are escorting Yennefer. She wastes no time to tell Geralt that Emirva Armaris, the emperor of Nilfgaard, holds a quest for him and that they must speak in Visma. Vesemir departs from the group and returns to Kaer Morhen, the witch's keep in the mountains. On the way to Visma, Geralt and Yennefer gets run up on by the Wild Hunt. Yen is like, oh, alright. Upon making it to Visma, Geralt is told by Emir to find his daughter Cirilla. The Emperor is Ciri's biological papa, and he knows the Wild Hunt is after her. They want Ciri because of the elder blood she has running through her veins. The Wild Hunt wants to channel the power she holds. Geralt and Yennefer discuss where they will search for her. And this is where you learn that Geralt hates portals.
So why don't I teleport you to Vel and get you there at once?
Not gonna happen. I'll go on horseback.
Arriving in Velen, Geralt trails the crumbs. He comes across a village that was invaded by the Wild Hunt. Then he finds a journal that belonged to a dead Nilfgaardian spy who's been tracking Ciri. Within the notes, it opens up a few key points on where the girl may have been, and it led Geralt into finding Philip Stinga, aka the Bloody Baron. Speaking with the man at his fort about Ciri, he wanted Geralt's aid to find his missing daughter and wife. In exchange, he opened up more about Ciri. The Baron then mentioned about her briefly, and it mentioned about how they met. This is where we get the first flashback of Ciri. Cool thing about these flashback sequences, and yes, it happens more than once, you get to actually play Ciri. Her fighting style is pretty identical to Geralt's. Only difference is, instead of sidestep, dodging, and rolling, she teleport jumps. Makes sense why she is called the Lady of Space and Time. You don't really have a choice at this point, so you kinda have to be up for the task on helping the guy. In investigation, you learn that the Baron beat his wife, causing her to flee with their daughter. You also gain knowledge of her being preggo with a second child and having a miscarriage. When an unborn fetus doesn't get a proper burial, they turn into botchlings, pretty much man-eating babies. You find the fucked up couple's botchling, lift the curse, then you wait for it to turn into a lubricant, a guardian spirit. Since this one's mother was the one you were looking for, it knew where to guide you. You get led to a farmer's home and learn that he took in the Baron's daughter, who's now in Oxenford. While for the mother, she was taken from a fiend. Geralt gets reacquainted with a special sorcerer lady friend, Keira Metz. She was also mentioned in the Nilfgaardian spy's journal. Keira met an elven mage who knows about Ciri and pointed the way to his hideout lab. After getting help from her against the Wild Hunt in the elven laboratory, we learned that Ciri was in a quarrel with ladies in the woods, the crones of Crookback Bog. When arriving on the witch's swamp, you are met with orphan children and a person they called Gran. This ties back to what I talked about earlier in the video. The thing that Geralt wanted from the crones was Ciri's whereabouts. You don't get much from them other than they were planning on eating the girl, and she dips on them before they could. This is where he learned that the elder lady was Anna, the Baron's wife. And trust me, let the kids die. Trust. When you return back to the Baron and inform him about the news, then he tells you about his last interaction with Ciri. Another flashback is brought up, and you see Ciri do a cross-map teleport to save Baron from a basilisk. That's where they had to close the book and split. Ciri mentions how every time she uses her power, the Wild Hunt knows how to locate her. In regards for the Baron, she had to go and mentioned she'll be off to Novigrad. There you are, in the free city of Verdania, where prostitutes sell themselves and witch hunters roam. You meet with Triss Merigold, another beloved sorceress of Geralt's. I think he took having magic with women all too seriously. After intertwining with her, she tells you to visit Oneiromancer Corin Tilly. She has the ability to interpret dreams. She was helping Geralt on his search for Ciri. She puts him in a deep sleep, and within the dream, he saw a dandelion, a bard, and a friend. He was with Ciri when she made it to Novigrad. Geralt makes his way to the bard's brothel and realizes he is gone. Instead, he is met with a dwarf named Zoltan. The two work around town to find Dandelion, and they figure out from Priscilla, a love interest of the bard, that he's being held captive after a failed heist. Geralt and Triss then try to pull a facade to get Dandelion from the witch hunters, trading the mage for the bard. It fails and they end up killing the captain. That was a problem, but an idea was sparked to find a Dapple named Dudu who can morph into other people. The idea was for Dudu to turn into the witch hunter they killed and get Dandelion out of the facility he's held in. Up to this point, Priscilla sums up everything to the T.
So you must find Dudu in order to find Dandelion, with the aim of ultimately finding Ciri. Sounds like an awful lot of searching, but I do wish you luck.
Yeah, Sounds about right. You eventually find Dudu and make plans to move Dandelion. When on the road, Geralt and his former militia group go for an ambush on the cart that Dandelion's in. Once the bard is saved, he didn't have much to say about Ciri, other than they were on the run and she vanishes out. Another empty lead. There's only one more stop, which is to meet up with Yennefer in Skellige. The couple find magic traces left behind Ciri and the elf mage who was looking for her. Turns out they were split after being confronted by the Wild Hunt. Ciri was teleported out once again, and the mage, whose name we learn, Avallac'h, is cursed. Yennefer leaves for Kaer Morhen, and you go find Avallac'h. The cursed mage is in Velen, in the Baron's Keep. They were using him as a laughingstock. It's kind of fucked up. Geralt and Avallac'h venture off to Kaer Morhen as well in the attempt to break the curse. Once there, you meet Lambert and Eskel, the only witches left in the school. The three have a nice little chit-chat. It was a warrior's night. The next morning, preparations are made with Yennefer to release Avallac'h. Lifting the curse was successful, and the elf tells you that Ciri is in the Isle of the Mist, a hidden island in Skellige. Once there, you are guided by a light orb that was emitted from Avallac'h. You make it to a cabin and find it locked. It was inhabited by some dwarves who crashed the island. It won't open until you save some of their lost crewmates. There was only one alive, sadly. Knowing they'd be safe, they open the door and take off in the boat you came in. Within the cabin lies quiet. You see a still body laying on a cot, an ashen-haired woman, lifeless. It was Ciri. Was finally found, but not there. The light that was guiding you seeps within Ciri and returns her consciousness. This moment was one to cherish. It was what my first 35 hours of playing worked up to. A mutant father reuniting with his world-ending daughter in a planet of monsters. The two take a bit of time to catch up and rejoice in each other's company before teleporting back to Kaer Morhen. Returning to the Witcher's Keep, everyone welcomes Ciri. Then they set on preparations. Before Geralt went on his quest to find Ciri, he and the rest of the crew came up with a plan, which was to gather allies and settle for battle. So when Ciri teleports back, the Wild Hunt will track her to Kaer Morhen. Well, the fight will happen. You had to complete certain major side quests to obtain assistance. If you didn't, those characters won't show up for it. I didn't manage to get everyone you can possibly get, but I think I had enough. The Wild Hunt arrives and launches their attack immediately. It seems like the resistance was going right, but eventually was overcome, leading Vesemir to his death. That then caused Ciri to go full power rage mode and drove the army off. Not being able to control her power, Avallac'h had to awake from being hospitalized and calm the storm. Days after, Geralt and Ciri found the whereabouts of Emerlith, the guy that killed Vesemir. The crones were also in service, so they were going to get their hands too. Geralt goes for the elf of the hunt, and Ciri fights the old hags to wipe the floor of the evildoers, but one of the crones escaped. Then they make their way to Novigrad to help Triss and Yennefer reform the larger sorceress in hopes to get assistance against the Wild Hunt. Philippa Eilhart, one of the sorcerers, assists us in fighting the Sunstone in Skellige, which Avallac'h uses to summon the Wild Hunt. This is the final battle. A means to an end. The Nilfgaardian army is there to stand in the fight as well. You defeat Caranthir, the navigator of the Wild Hunt, and then you go for Eredin, the king. He's the final showdown, so you already know it's crunch time. The fight was a bit underwhelming, wasn't too much of a challenge. All his abilities were easy to read and telegraph. I've still yet to beat the game in Death March, so we'll see about that. Upon dying, Eredin tells Geralt that Avallac'h played a trick and made off with Cirilla. The White Frost then occurs, a phenomenon where the world is frozen to hell. The end. You make it to a nearby tower, realizing Avallac'h was only insisting on what Ciri wanted to stop. She intended to stop the White Frost from destroying their world. She walks through the rift the elven mage opened and fulfills her destiny. A sacrifice to save humanity. My heart dropped because we've only just found her. I had grown a connection to this character for her just to die not too long after. Damn. Time after the final stand, we're met with Emhyr and Geralt talking. They're speaking of Ciri's sacrifice and what her last thoughts of her father were. Geralt then mentioned he has to meet up with a woman, but before, you meet up with a man who gives you a sword and you give it a name. Then after you go to the inn where you're supposed to meet the lady, she lifts her hood, and bam, it's fucking Ciri. The sword the old dude gave you was Geralt's gift to Cirilla. It's her step up to officially being a Witcher. That's the ending I got. And I know there's a few endings as well. Personally, I think this ending is canon. I fuck with this shit. I feel I had the best possible ending. Yeah. The Witcher 3 is one hell of an emotional roller coaster. It felt like a wild goose chase through a lot of it. Every major character felt unique and played their roles respectively. The gameplay wasn't the most innovative and can be repetitive at times, but it was solid. I enjoyed the upgrade and gear system. definitely loved the monsters the world was filled with. The content had so much to offer that I still have much things to do when I get back on. I eventually want to clear more of the game, if not 100% this shit. Also to note, the DLCs, I haven't touched it either. From what I've experienced, this game is iconic. I'm for sure hyped to see the future of these characters. Definitely a must play. I'll be going back to the other two games in the future. Stay tuned for that. Peace and love. Godspeed.